Hello, thank you so much for joining us for our Veterans in Agriculture Lunch and Learn series. I'm Ann Johans. I work for Iowa State University, and I'm here with Beth Graybow, Barb Stewart, and Greg Townley. And we are talking about NRCS programs today. But if you have not joined us before for a WebEx, thank you so much for being here for this series. Along the right-hand side of the screen, you have some options for typing in questions through either the chat box or the Q&A, and just know we will get to all of those at the very end. And if you have any questions about, tech questions, be sure to type those in and we will try and help you out as we go through today's session. But hopefully you're not having any trouble hearing us this morning or this afternoon, right? It's afternoon. So with that, I am going to pass it over to Beth to introduce today's speakers.
Hi, and welcome everybody. I want to thank you for you joining us today. As Ann said, I'm Beth Graybaugh with Veterans in Agriculture. And if you haven't heard of Veterans in Agriculture, we are a small nonprofit that's based in Urbandale, Iowa, with the mission to help veterans thrive in agriculture. So if you have any questions, want to be connected with resources, or just get general information, please feel free to contact me. I'd like to thank Iowa State University for providing the support for this series, and this project is also being supported by the North Central Extension Risk Management Education Program and USDA. So we've got two speakers today, and our first speaker is Barb Stewart, and she's working with the National and Iowa Farmers Union on a USDA-funded project to provide education, outreach, and technical assistance for conservation planning. So I'd like to welcome Barb.
Yeah, thank you, Beth. I am going to go ahead and try and share my screen. If you can hang on just a second. We'll bring up this PowerPoint and we will get started. In the meantime, I want to thank all of the veterans out there for your service. We surely appreciate that and appreciate your efforts in agriculture as well. So let me see if I can. There we go.
Looks good, Barb.
All right. Good. Thank you. Thanks, Beth and Ann. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the Iowa Farmers Union Conservation Planning Initiative. Now, when we talk about conservation planning, it generally is a resource that is offered through the USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. So if you're familiar with that program, this is very similar. Except that we are targeting individuals that we consider underserved. So individuals such as organic farmers, veterans, women landowners. So we are focusing an effort on the smaller agricultural production so that we make sure that they have the advantages and access to USDA programs as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. This Conservation Planning Initiative is a USDA NRCS funded initiative that is being operated through the National Farmers Union and the Iowa Farmers Union. This particular initiative is focused strictly in Iowa, so it is available to Iowa producers. The intent of the initiative is really to provide education, outreach, and technical assistance in conservation planning. We're really trying to promote the benefits and the opportunities of conservation planning and make it available to individuals that may never have been into a USDA NRCS office. So we want to make sure that those individuals have the same access as perhaps some of your bigger farmers in the area. The focus on conservation planning is on natural systems and ecological processes that sustain these natural resources that are out there on the farm. And what we try to do is help our clients look at sustainable use and sound management of these resources. And NRCS has a nice acronym that we call Swapa. And what we focus on is the soil resource, which includes the health of the soil, as well as erosion control and other resource concerns that address the soil resource. We also look at the water quality and water quantity um, that is available on the farm, or what the resources that are on the farm could affect neighboring water quality and quantity. Also look at air quality, whether it's odor or greenhouse gases. We also look at plant, whether those plants that are growing on the farm are suitable for the area, whether they're getting the right nutrients, and basically the health of the plant. And then we also look at animals, and that includes domestic animals, whether it's livestock, as well as wildlife. So, and then we look also at the human resource and the economics. So those are really the basic planning resources that we try and address when we look at conservation planning. So the planning process, what we do is we discuss what the goals are that you have for that farm, whether it's your current operation or what you're looking at in the future. If you are currently farming it and are looking at maybe transitioning to organic, or it's in CRP and you're looking at bringing it into cropland, we look at what your particular goals are for that farm and look at how those resources can be used. We discuss what the cropping current system is out there, wildlife, soil health, and other land management objectives. So, are you interested in wildlife? What particular type of wildlife are you interested in? Is it deer for deer hunting? Is it pheasants? Is it pollinators? We discuss all of those opportunities when we're looking at what your goals are for that farm. And then the individual that actually does the conservation planning is going to examine what those natural resources are on the farm. They'll actually walk over the property, look at if there's any concerns or opportunities that are out there that are affecting those natural resources. And then they'll point out areas that may need to be protected, restored, or improved, and provide recommendations. And generally, we look at a whole conservation system or practices. So what we try and do is recommend systems or practices that will meet your goals and at the same time protect those resources. And then we help the individual weigh what the different alternatives are so that they can make a sound decision. So that's the planning process. Some of the benefits of a conservation plan is it'll help you increase the effectiveness of the conservation systems and practices that are out there. So when we go out and walk over a farm and look at all of the resources out there, it's much more beneficial than, say, if an individual walks in the office and says, I've got an erosion problem here, I want to put a terrace in. A terrace may not be the best solution for that. Particularly, let's say there's a water quality issue. If terraces could provide a direct conduit of nutrients directly into a stream that may be of concern. So there may be other issues or other practices that you may want to consider as well as the terraces, or maybe a totally different conservation practice altogether. So that's where we increase the effectiveness of these systems and practices because we're looking at the overall picture. And then implementation schedule that fits your timeline and what your resources are. For example, if you do not want to invest a lot of money into a structural practice, maybe there are some management out there that can address the problem at the same time and not affect or have a large effect on your financial resources. And then it can also help improve your bottom line. Some conservation practices out there can help you better use nutrients so that maybe you're applying the nutrients only where they're needed and not applying them where areas that are already have excess nutrients there. So we can help improve the bottom line that way. And it also compliance with environmental regulations. For example, the Farm Bill requires some basic erosion control if you want to participate in certain conservation programs. And so that'll help, with the conservation plan, that'll help you address what, those environmental regulations may be. And overall, it's going to help improve the water, the soil, the air, and the wildlife habitat on the farm. It can also help obtain marketing advantages through demonstration of sustainability. For example, there are some companies out there that will actually offer a premium for crops if you can show that you are growing it in a sustainable manner. And through a conservation plan that can help you document some of those sustainable methods that you may be using. So how do you get started? Basically, you get started by contacting me, the project coordinator. At that time, I will send out a form that will provide access. It's a release form that provides access to the USDA offices. And if a farm plan had been developed on that property, maybe years before, even by a previous owner, we can have access to those plans, and also to get the USDA maps and the official field numbers on that. We can also determine if soil tests are needed. We can actually go out and take some of the soil test samples and send them in. And so that is available for the conservation planner to go ahead and assess what the nutrient needs are out there on the farm. The project coordinator will then coordinate this with a technical service provider. And basically, the technical service provider is the individual that will go out and walk the land and talk to you about your conservation goals and actually assist you in developing that conservation plan. And I want to really emphasize that this is your conservation plan. So it's not our plan, it's not the government's plan, it's what you want to do on the land. The TSP will follow up with 2 farm visits to complete the conservation plan. You can meet virtually if you feel uncomfortable about actually meeting in person. However, you're more than welcome to go out and walk the land with the planner. So some of the benefits of this initiative: it's free for farms up to 300 acres. Again, we're trying to target the smaller producer, but if you have additional acres over that 300 acres, there is a small fee for those additional acres to help offset the additional costs that it will cost the project to fund the technical service provider. And I believe that's $2 an acre. There are free soil test sampling and the results if they're needed. And what I mean by if they're needed is we focus on cropland area and pasture land, where we will take the soil samples. And if you already have soil samples on your property that are less than 4 years old, those are considered adequate or good enough. And so we'll use those for the planning process. But if you do not have any soil samples, then we will go out and collect those samples and send them in. All of this is completely confidential, so we're not going to share this information with anybody else. It is your plan, and it is also provided to the NRCS office to maintain as your record, so that, for example, if you determine that you want to implement a certain practice, the NRCS office has that conservation plan, and generally there is actually a priority for individuals that do have plans completed for financial assistance. It is targeting the underserved, so organic farmers that are transitioning into organic, beginning farmers, veterans, women. Those are all focused on what this project is focusing on. However, you do not necessarily need to be in one of these underserved groupings in order to participate in the project. The project is time limited. The funding will run out in July of 2021. So if you're interested, you'll want to sign up soon. However, I will also mention that they are looking at submitting another grant. So if you think you'll be interested, but not before that July 2020, you may want to go ahead and contact me anyway, because that'll be basically information that we can provide when we submit our grant request, is that we have so many people, X number of people who are waiting for conservation plans that we could not service during this first grant period. So benefits of conservation planning. I think I already addressed that. It's recommended some of the things that will come out of this conservation planning process is it'll recommend conservation practices to address any resource concerns, as well as meeting your landowner goals. It will also introduce conservation programs to help assist with implementation. Financial assistance and technical assistance may be available for implementation. There's not a guarantee. I will emphasize that the conservation planning process is available at any NRCS office. So you're more than welcome to walk into an NRCS office and request conservation planning. Got some minutes. My printer's kicking on for some reason. Anyway, with all of that, I do want to point out that Greg Townley is here. He is actually with the NRCS office, and he can talk a little bit more about what financial and technical assistance is available for helping implement once you have a conservation plan. I'll leave that with my contact information here, and that is all I have. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have at the end of Greg's presentation. So with that, I think I'm ready to turn it back over to you, Beth.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Barb, for that information. So our next speaker is Greg Townley, and he is a veteran and a USDA an USDA NRCS employee. And as Barb mentioned, he's going to provide some information on the NRCS programs. So welcome, Greg.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll go ahead and share my screen here. And is that coming up okay?
Looks good, thank you.
All right. So as Beth said, I'm Greg Townley, and I'm going to talk to you about the NRCS programs and the benefits that are available to veterans. Just slide here. Okay. All right. So I work as a resource team leader for the Indianola Resource Team in Iowa, located just southwest of Des Moines, or it actually includes Polk County, which is Des Moines. And I supervise the staff in those offices that go out and work in all 4 counties to help put conservation on the land. And then we also have a farm in Jasper County, so just east of Des Moines, where we have 340 acres and raise corn and soybeans. And we've been doing cover crops and some hay. We also raise goats, we got chickens, we got couple calves that were feeding out to butcher. So Beth mentioned I am a veteran, retired from the Army Reserve as a colonel in 2018, and have had a couple of deployments to Iraq in 2005 and Qatar in 2017. And then other mobilizations. When I was a battalion commander, I was at Des Moines for a year and at Fort Hood, Texas for a year. So that's kind of the background of where I'm coming from. The NRCS, if you're not familiar with it, is the Natural Resources Conservation Service, and it's part of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And the goal there is to support America's farmers and ranchers, forest landowners, and we do that by providing products and services that help people to be good stewards of their own land and to take care of the natural resources. Mostly working with private lands. We offer financial assistance and also technical assistance to help people to put conservation on the ground, improve their operations, and reduce production costs and protect the soil and water and other natural resources. We work at the local level. We try to work as much as possible with individual producers to deliver one-on-one personalized service, giving advice and helping them with financial assistance as well. We help them to make informed decisions and target conservation efforts so that producers can get the greatest return on investment. And like I said, we provide some financial resources to help with those conservation projects. So NRCS started back in the 1930s when the Dust Bowl was going on. And there's a guy named Hugh Hammond Bennett, who is considered to be the father of soil conservation. He was also the first chief of what was then the Soil Conservation Service. But he had been lobbying Congress that we needed an agency to help with all of the soil erosion that was going on across the country. There was considerable amount with all the, everything was being tilled, breaking out new ground. There was a lot of erosion from water and also from wind. So it just so happened that he was talking to Congress in 1935 on March 6th and again on March 21st, and a big dust cloud rolled into Washington, D.C. It gave him the perfect opportunity to explain what was causing those storms and to offer a solution for it. So Congress passed the Soil Conservation Act, and it was signed into law by President Franklin Roosevelt on April 27th of 1935. That law directed the Secretary of Agriculture to establish the Soil Conservation Service. And it continued on with that name until 1994, when the name was changed to NRCS. And that was to take into account all of the natural resources that we work with. Like Barb mentioned, the Swapa, soil, water, air, plants, animals. So we broadened our name to show that we're taking care of that. I just threw up this slide to show the way that we're set up in Iowa. I know some of the people that watch this may not be in Iowa, but we have resource teams in each of these 4 county units. And so I'm in the gray unit just to the southwest of the center of the state and covering the staff in that 4 county unit. But we've got these teams, and then we've got a district conservationist that's in charge of each county. And they work with the producers and get to know the landowners that are in that county and can be the face to them on anything that any questions that they have, and so that they can continue to provide assistance to them. All right, so I'll give an overview of the main NRCS programs. And we use a lot of acronyms, so I spelled them out here on this slide. But EQIP is Environmental Quality Incentive Program, CSP, Conservation Stewardship Program, CTA, Conservation Technical Assistance, ASEP, Agricultural Conservation Easement Program, and CRP, Conservation Reserve Program. So the CRP is actually administered by the Farm Service Agency, but NRCS is the technical agent. So I'll go over these in more detail on future slides. Start out with EQIP. This is one that we give an incentive payment to producers for doing specific practices that address a resource concern. For example, if you have a gully that's washing through your field, we could design a grassed waterway to take care of that, or we could design a terrace. across the hillside, or a water and sediment control basin. So a few different options based on our field visit and what would work best for that specific situation. And then EQIP in the past has paid like a 50% cost share rate. We've gone now to paying on an incentive payment rather than a cost share rate. It kind of standardizes some of the rates that we use. We draw up a contract with the producer. They're usually 1 to 5 years. We try to keep the contract as short as possible so that we can go ahead and get the work done right away and get the conservation on the ground. If someone's interested in signing up for the program, you can sign up at any time. We have a continuous sign up, but then we set different batching dates where we look at all the applications that are received up to that batching deadline. And then we put those through a ranking system to determine which ones will get funded. And we receive money under different funding pools. There's a few examples here listed. Some of those are based on the type of practice, some based on the producer, and some based on location. So the type of practice are ones like soil health, where we would maybe be paying for putting cover crop on the ground. Organic transition, where somebody is wanting to start an organic operation and they go through that process of getting certified as organic. On-farm energy, to use solar systems or to reduce the amount of energy that's used on a farm. High tunnel would be a greenhouse type situation. And then we get into the producers, limited resource producer, somebody that's low financial availability could qualify for funding in that area. A beginning farmer, socially disadvantaged. And so veterans get some status in these two. They may have to be one of the other categories and then have the veteran status that helps them get points, but we don't have a separate funding pool just specifically for veterans. And then it depends on, like if somebody's in a livestock operation, we have a funding pool for that, for grazing systems, for example. And then ones in specific watersheds. If your land is located in an area that drains toward a specific river that is being targeted, or a lake, so that we can focus on water quality normally. So once applications are ranked, we do a contract with the highest priority ones in the ranking, and then we have the producer sign the contract. NRCS develops a conservation plan, and then we also do designs for all the projects. And that way the producer knows exactly what needs to be done, then goes out and hires their own contractor to do the work. Like, for example, if you're doing earthwork or building fence or whatever, you can do work yourself or hire it out. And then after the project is done, you bring in your bills and certify that it was completed the way that it was supposed to be completed. We check that and send out a payment. So that's the way EQIP works. A real quick overview of it. CSP is Conservation Stewardship Program. This is one that is meant to reward a producer that is already doing a good job with conservation. And it helps those producers maintain the existing conservation systems that they have and then improve on those as well. And it also pays them to adopt additional conservation activities that will address other resource concerns. The level of payment is based on the level of conservation performance, and contracts are for 5 years on these. It includes an annual payment for any new conservation activities and for maintaining existing practices, and then there's supplemental payments for adopting new practices. To qualify in the ranking system, you would have to meet certain stewardship threshold levels for at least 2 of the priority resource concerns at the time of application, and then agree to implement an additional priority resource concern threshold later on during the length of the contract. This program is set up more for operators, whereas EQIP could be landowners or operators. For example, if you were putting a terrace on the land, usually the landowner would want to pay for that because it's something that's going to stay with the land long term. This payment is set up more for operators, and it looks at their whole farm, all the farms that they operate will be included in the CSP contract. All right, next program is CTA, Conservation Technical Assistance. This is really just providing technical advice to the customers. We do field visits. This is a free service. We go out and do conservation planning to address any of the resource concerns that the producer has. And our goal is to do as much of that in the field as possible and walk with the producer and see the ground and see, figure out the best way to treat the problems with various resource concerns. And then we also do education. We conduct field days and other training events. All right, ACEP, Agricultural Conservation Easement Program. Some of you may be familiar with WRP that's been around in the past, a wetland reserve program. This is the closest thing that we have to it, where we do easements that protect the land, and a lot of times it deals with wetlands. We're restoring those wetlands to the way that they were before or enhancing them to make them even better. We also include grasslands and working farms. In the past 25 years, we've protected more than 4.4 million acres of wetlands through this program. The portion of ACEP that mainly deals with wetlands is the wetland reserve easements. And so that provides a lot of benefits, including fish and wildlife habitat, improving water quality, reducing flooding, recharging groundwater, protecting biological diversity, and providing opportunities for education and recreation. A lot of times after an easement is established, there's still residual value in the land that could be sold to like a DNR or some other agency that may use that for recreation and be able to let the public use those areas. But once it's in easement, it cannot be cropped anymore. It's just maintained for the wildlife benefits and for the other benefits listed above. So in this, the easements can be permanent easements or could be for 30 years or a shorter term. Most of the ones that we do are permanent easements. There's a few out there that are 30-year, and the term is, the way I understand it, more specific for like some tribal lands. They were able to do some shorter term easements. But for the most part, the easement that we do is permanent, stays with the land when the land is sold to another person. We pay for the restoration costs to help establish or enhance a wetland or to improve the wildlife habitat. And then we pay the easement value of the land. So it's kind of like selling the land as far as the price, but you maintain ownership. And you can still sell whatever residual value is in the land with that easement on it that says it's not going to be farmed. And then we pay the legal fees as well. CRP is the Conservation Reserve Program. And like I said, it's administered by Farm Service Agency, but NRCS is the technical agency. So in this program, producers receive an annual payment for 10 or 15 years, depending on their contract. And it's for crop ground that's being converted to grass, or it could be to trees as well. We have general and continuous sign up. The general sign up is for whole fields normally, and it's where it has to be bid in to get accepted into the CRP. And then those are ranked nationwide to determine how many can go in. The continuous sign up is, as it says, ongoing sign up, but it's for a different type of practices. One of the main ones used in continuous sign up is a filter strip. So if you have a creek that runs through your farm and you want to put a grass filter strip out to 120 feet from the creek bank, that could go in the continuous sign up and get accepted into the program that way. And then it would still be the same thing, like a 10-year contract. The people that get CRP land accepted into the program will receive a rental rate each year. They get an annual payment. that's based on the soil type, and it's basically the cash rent value of the land. It does change a little bit. It's not always consistently the cash rent value, but that's the way that the rates are generally established. And to be eligible for CRP, the ground has to have been cropped 4 of the years between 2012 and 2017. Those eligibility years change a little bit from time to time, but like if somebody was wanting to break out new ground that's been in grass and start cropping it to make it eligible for CRP, that may not work because we look at some locked in years. It would only change if a future farm bill changes the years of eligibility. So once land is accepted into the CRP, then NRCS provides a seeding plan and a conservation plan, provide technical assistance to help the producer with getting the land set, get the seeding done, help them with knowing how to take care of it, to do mowing to get it established, and also to talk about the nesting season. We have a nesting season May 15 to August 1 where you can't mow it after the first couple of years once the grass seeding is established. So we provide that technical assistance to the producer. All right, so talk a little bit about veteran benefits with USDA. A veteran farmer or rancher is someone who has served in the military, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, Coast Guard, including the reserve component, and was released from service under conditions of anything except dishonorable. So that's the first part of the qualification. And then the second part is basically a beginning farmer, not operated a farm or ranch before, or at least not within the last 10 years, or someone who just obtained veteran status in the most recent 10-year period. And the most recent 10-year period is the 10 years prior to, I should just read the term, most recent 10-year period is 10 years from the date of discharge through the last day of the fiscal year in which the contract is starting. So won't spend a lot of time on that slide, but it just kind of spells out the different years based on the program that you're going into. And I had a question that I sent in the state office about what the on this previous slide where it talks about where they first obtained status as a veteran. And so I haven't got an answer back on that yet for sure, but they're looking it up. And I guess the main thing is if you have a question on whether you do qualify on that part, check with your local office and see. Historically underserved is a self-certification, just like the veteran preference is a self-certification. And those that end up in the historically underserved category can get payments that are 25% higher than the standard rate, not to exceed 90% of their costs, and are eligible for advanced payments. So here's a chart that looks at veteran eligibility. And so if you follow across, I'll just go through at least one of them. And so on the left side, if a veteran status was obtained during the most recent 10-year period, and you certify as a beginning farmer, and you certify as do not certify as socially disadvantaged, you would still get that higher payment rate that is being applied. And you would get veteran preference, which is additional points in the ranking system that will help you to get qualified for the program. So if you were interested in applying for a program, we would just look at your particular situation in the field office that you go to. That's a real quick overview of what veterans preference is, veteran eligibility. So who to contact if the best thing is go to your local office. If you're not familiar with the NRCS office, go to this website, nrcs.usda.gov. And then when you go there, you can click on the Contact Us tab and click on your state and then your county. And then that will bring up a phone number and an address of the local office. And then you can click on Natural Resource Conservation Service, and it would actually get you the name of the person that's in charge of that office so that you can contact them. I listed my contact information here too, so feel free to contact me if you have any questions. And I also want to thank you for your service, for what you've done for our country. Military is important to my family. These are just some pictures. The one on the left is my dad, and myself in the middle, and my brother in the Navy. My dad retired as a lieutenant colonel from the Missouri National Guard. He was a veterinarian who did food inspection. And my brother started 4 years in the Navy, and then he came back and went to college, and then went active duty Army. So he retired with 20 years as a major in the Army. The middle picture is myself and my wife, who reached the rank of colonel as well, and reached that mandatory retirement as an officer and decided to stay in longer as a warrant officer. So she's actually still in, but is retiring this May. And in the middle is our son. This was at his commissioning service when he became a second lieutenant. He's currently a first lieutenant. Picture on the right is just to indicate that I know that your service affects your whole family. It's my daughter, as I was getting ready for deployment, and she was trying on the clothes, but the family all sacrifices the service that you do. And so I do appreciate your service and hope that we can provide benefits that help you now. This is our non-discrimination statement, and just saying that we do intend to handle all of our programs with equal access to everyone, and we hope that we're able to do that effectively. With that, that concludes my presentation. So thanks again.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you for your service. I appreciated seeing that it's a whole family affair in your family. That's, I think, wonderful. I have several questions, and I would encourage those who are online with us to enter in your questions, because mine are always harder, is what I've been told. No, but Greg, you actually put in a question that I think is really good. Barb, could you address the NFU's initiative? It is free for farms up to 300 acres. Is that based on acres that are planned or acres owned?
That would be acres in the farm. So, for example, if you have a farm that's 300 acres and 250 is cropland, it'd be the whole farm, because we're looking at the whole area.
Okay.
The
And I always think about
farmstead as well as timber.
Okay. And so when a producer, like you might have multiple tracks with the FSA office. It's all those combined? Like,
Yeah,
okay.
correct.
Okay. I get a lot of questions from, I work with leasing, right, with Iowa State Extension, and we get a lot of questions about conservation plans between tenants and landowners. So, and both of you can kind of address this. We have some add-on addendums for a farmland lease if the tenant is looking at implementing a conservation practice, because that has, it's beyond the life of probably what that agreement would be. How do you have that conversation, or do you get questions on that when you're talking about implementing conservation practices? And so how do you kind of balance that discussion between tenants and landowners? And Barbara, if you would like to go first.
Okay, what we try and do is plan with the landowner and the tenant at the same time. So they both have an idea or a concept of what the tenant is able and willing to do, and what the landowner is, willing to do as well. So we try to incorporate both of them into the conservation planning process. So Greg, do you have any additional
Yeah,
comments?
I agree with that. And then as far as the payments, a lot of the programs, we can let them choose which way they want to receive payments based on who's putting in the cost for the project.
Very good. You did mention this, Greg, how to find your local NRCS office. Best case would be to go through the website, click on the contact us, and then pick your state. The other thing I have learned over time is that if you do look it up in the phone book, it is likely under USDA Service Center, right?
Sounds
Is that
right.
where you
Yeah,
find yourself there? Okay.
It's not always in the same place where you would think. And then just also a note too is it's important to call there. The offices are all currently closed down right now with COVID, so there's usually somebody in the office, but you should call first instead of just planning on going in the office.
For sure. And I know as the weather gets warmer, hopefully you can have more meetings and parking lots and that sort of thing too.
Right.
So, and then another question is that you mentioned funding pools. So we do have a few who have joined us from outside of Iowa. Are these pools the same nationwide or do they vary by the different states?
They do vary. There's some that are specific to the state, but there's some that are generic everywhere. So yeah, the amount of money that's distributed to each state is a little bit different, and it fits in a lot of different categories.
Okay. And does it vary as well by, like there's CRP is divvied out differently than EQIP funds?
I was trying to think whether CRP had a cap for a certain number per year or not, but I know that the Secretary of Agriculture at the national level is able to decide which contracts actually go out. And so Iowa does have a very large amount of acres that go into CRP. So it's based on like an erodibility index score though, how they compare to other farms.
Okay. And then I'm making the assumption that when we talk about acres under conservation plans in Iowa, that CRP would be kind of top dog, right? Of the other programs, though, I'm just curious that NRCS does provide. What one would you consider the most popular or that you get the most requests to look into?
Yeah, I think probably EQIP is the other program that's used the most. We also like under CTA, the Conservation Technical Assistance, it's not that they're getting specific funding for anything, but we do provide assistance. Everybody that's receiving any type of funding from USDA needs to be in compliance with highly erodible land and wetland compliance rules. So we do write conservation plans on all of those that tells a farmer if they have highly erodible land, they may be restricted on how much tillage they could do. Or it may also spell out that they need to have grassed waterways in certain locations. So we do quite a bit of planning just in that category that is not actually receiving additional funding to the program.
And I think I have asked probably every week, Beth, when you have a conversation, like somebody, walks in, maybe calls more likely right now or emails, do you ask in the initial conversations whether or not they are a veteran? Is it on the form? Do people need to bring that up?
They should bring it up. It's I don't think we necessarily ask immediately until we see that we're going to get them signed into a program. Barb talked about the planning aspect. We try to do planning before we do programs, so that instead of just trying to sell them on a certain program or provide financial assistance for something, we want to see what the problem is first. And so we'll talk about the planning part and trying to address the resource concern, then decide which program fits best for it. And sometimes it's even, we partner with the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, and sometimes we'll direct somebody to state funding rather than the federal funding. But either way, when they do sign the application, that's when they would mark if they have veteran status or not.
Okay. This is my last question. It's for Barb. So you're the Iowa unit kind of in the National Farmers Union, correct? And
Correct.
so are there the pool of funds you have, do other states have similar programs, or would you just encourage people to maybe check with the farmers union within their state?
Yes, I would encourage you to check with the Iowa or with Farmers Union within your state. Right now, the funding is through a USDA grant that is specific to Iowa. And I do not know if there are other grants out there that are similar in other states.
But there might be a program that is unique to that state that that we don't have here in Iowa too. That definitely something to check into. So
That is correct.
okay,
That is
thank you both so much. I'm going to pass it over to Beth to share final comments.
Great. Well, I want to thank both Barb and Craig for speaking to us today and providing us some great information. I know one of the common things I get a lot of questions about is just the basics of the USDA programs and how to go about finding them and meeting with them and stuff. And I know that the veterans that I have sent to NRCS offices nationwide have had great experiences with learning about the soil types on a new farm that they may have purchased or are leasing. So I get great comments with those that are working with your offices. So I want to thank you both for that as well. So I just want to, my last comment, I guess, is next week is our final Lunch and Learn series. And the topic is business planning. So I've got two veterans that are going to talk about the pros and cons of, do you have a corporation? Do you have sole proprietorship? What is the best type of business plan for your operation? And we'll be walking through those different topics. So I want to thank everybody for attending today.
Thank you all so much. You have a wonderful day.